So for my project, I decided to interview Misty Kuhn, who is an associate professor of chemistry and biochemistry at San Francisco State. She is my current lab PI, and I have been with her doing research for about 3 semesters now. And I feel that her trajectory of how she's where she is right now is something that really interests me, and I could see myself potentially pursuing that after I graduate. So I wanted to know a little bit more about her, so I chose her for this project. Um, so to start off with a little summary of her career, I was really interested to see how her educational trajectory was because I feel that my trajectory in going from high school to college hasn't been a very linear one, and I wanted to see if she shared the same experience. So she is from a small town in Indiana, and she actually completed her bachelor's in chemistry in a college over there, and then eventually pursued a PhD degree at Loyola University in Chicago. She actually researched the evolution of this specific protein from bacteria and plants. She learned enzyme kinetics, protein purification, molecular cloning. Protein purification actually is very central to what she does in her lab right now. So this is very interesting that she kind of started to get into learning about proteins and working with them in her PhD years. She said that she didn't really have a big interest in school in high school, and she moved around a lot, which was something that I could relate to. I actually went to 4 different high schools, and I also felt like I didn't have a strong passion that I had during high school, so it was a little hard to know what I wanted to pursue in college. Then she actually took a few years gap. She started a postdoc program that she wasn't quite interested in, but ultimately she ended up at a postdoc in Northwestern, where she once again worked with proteins of infectious diseases. Eventually, she ended up as an assistant professor at SF State, and it took her about 5 years to go from assistant professor to associate professor, which is when she applied to get tenured, and now she's a tenured faculty member. This is really interesting because I did not know how long it takes to go from being an assistant professor to an associate professor, and that the process is quite long in order to get a secure tenured position at a public university. She did say that it varies depending on the university and the requirements for an associate and an assistant professor. And one of my major questions was about the postdoc, like if it was required to have a postdoc to be an assistant or an associate professor. And she said that, during the time that she was becoming in the educational journey, it was during the recession. So they added postdoc as a way to kind of filter through the applicants who all had PhDs and masters. And so it felt kind of necessary for her to have that in order to have a professor position eventually. But it seems like, going from a bachelor to a PhD and staying in that research experience will get you to end up in this educational field. Additionally, I wanted to go over what she does at her lab. Here is a very general summary of what she does in her lab. So she works with what are called GMATs, which are a specific family of proteins. She tries to find a way to optimize the solubility of these proteins. There are some difficult groups that do not express very well. So one of the things that I was working on when I first joined the lab was trying to find expression conditions that could actually get these proteins to be more soluble, and thus we can get more soluble protein and eventually get more pure protein. So this is just like a beginning step to even getting pure protein to be able to further analyze them and then understand their structure and function. She uses E. coli cells, particularly BL21BE3 cells, which are pretty common in her lab. She uses them to express these proteins under different conditions. For example, something could be expressed under different temperature or different IPT3 concentration, which is what we use to express the protein in these cells. So I got to learn a lot about growing bacteria, growing E. coli cells. It's a 3-day process where we inoculate, grow, and harvest them. I got to experience that in my first semester. In the second semester, I actually got to work more with purifying some of the proteins that are able to solubilize properly, and then understand how to use the FBLC machine in her lab to actually go through an entire purification process. And now I'm currently working on this semester. I'm working on isoelectric gels, isoelectric focus gels, which are another way to optimize the condition of the protein to be able to find its PI, and thus able to allow us to actually work with the oligomeric states of the protein. So I find it very, very interesting to work in her lab, and a lot of the technical skills that I've learned are a first for me. And I think this is the greatest part of her career that I would want to pursue in the future. So here's her roles and responsibility as an instructor, as a professor, and as a research PI. Of course, her lab is the biggest thing that she is her pride and joy. So as an associate professor, she has a bunch of graduate and undergraduate students in her lab that she has running different projects and experiments. She makes sure that graduates have their own, master students have their own projects, and she actually helps them all throughout their thesis and when they get to the defending stage of their project as well. She teaches classes. She actually teaches biochem lab this semester. She's also teaching her own protein structure and function class, which she encourages her lab students to take. And I'm actually thinking about taking the next semester. She also, I know, is involved in committee work. Like she's part of department meetings and hiring new staff, and which seems to be like the less interesting part of the job, in my opinion. I did not know how much of that she had to do, but I learned a lot about that in our interview. She also makes sure that she's publishing every year and getting her master's students thesis to actually be able to publish a paper later on if they would like to. And of course, the biggest part of being a professor and having a research lab and being a tenured faculty is writing grants every year. So her lab is funded by the NIH, and she also has someone that works in her lab who was used to be a master's student, so she was able to pay her because of the grant. And of course, another interesting part of this job is that she does get to travel a lot to collaborate with other scientists who are also working with GMATs and actually finding crystallized structures of these proteins. And because we don't have the equipment at state to be able to crystallize proteins, she actually travels to Argonne Institute in Chicago quite often to be able to get these crystallized structures. And last year, she actually took a bunch of the lab students with her to go experience it. So this is a very interesting and pretty cool part of her job. So I guess to explain why I'm passionate about this career and potentially pursuing a path in research and potentially education as a professor. I've always been raised in an environment where my parents didn't have any interest in science, nor did they pursue that field. So it felt like growing up, I didn't have anybody to relate to or to look up to. Who was in that field. A lot of my family is not in STEM. They've all gone a different way. So I kind of felt a little bit isolated in my interest and passion. So college and SFC specifically was actually giving me a lot of direction about what research is really like and what really goes into it. So I think that really increased my passion. I also love being a hands-on learner, and having gotten into this lab really helped me understand how much I love just being in a lab and just being able to work with my own two hands and find results, or run SDS gels and things like that. So I think I would want to keep that part in my future. And believe it or not, I have a little bit of experience tutoring people and actually working with other peers that I've been able to teach or share my knowledge to. And I think that's a pretty cool part of the job. And one of the things that we talked about in the interview is that her passion is not necessarily this big question about solving like a big problem in society necessarily. She likes to actually, put together little pieces of puzzle or add to something that's already in society. So she doesn't necessarily have maybe a disease she's trying to cure or anything like that, but she does love proteins, and then she wants to answer this very specific question, complete this puzzle that already exists about the GMATs and the function and structure. So it's pretty interesting to see that she's very open in her interest and passion, even though she works with a very small set of questions. And I think that's pretty cool. And finally, this is the career development that I was able to put together if I were to follow and end up in this career position. So, of course, the classes that I'm taking at SF State right now and the ones I will be taking, like Biochemistry 1, 2, and PChem, will all contribute to a basic knowledge and, will further my passion in STEM and in science in general. I also, in addition to currently working in her lab and doing that experience, I want to apply to an internship at Gemini this summer to further pursue that. I also attended a conference that they had to see the research that's being done at Genentech, and I'm very interested in that as well. And I think deciding whether I would want to go into the SF State Scholar Program for an accelerated master's program or just applying into a PhD program after the bachelor degree would be a good idea. And of course, some of the skills that I've developed as a researcher in Professor Kuhn's lab are, just being very, very organized with my note keeping, being curious and passionate about the research that's happening, and reading a lot of journals and articles to educate myself about the research are some of the skills I'm learning. And I think patience is going to be a very big skill, although non-technical, it's going to be a very big skill because the pathway that she's had is many, many years long. And while it's a little bit daunting to me, I think I need to be patient to get myself at a time, whether it's a master's or PhD or an internship that I'm pursuing. And also just constantly finding opportunities to contribute to research that is being done in the field that I'm interested in, and collaborating and attending conferences to expand the knowledge in the field is also very, very important. And I think that's it. Thank you so much.